Good morning, good afternoon. We are live. We are so happy to see you today. Thank you for joining our program today. We are talking about such an important topic. This is our Champ Chat that we love to do once a month, where we talk about everything related to people and culture. And today, the topic in honor of Women's History Month is exploring women's achievements and gaps. So we are super excited that you're here today. My name is Michelle Beauchamp. My company is called the Champ Group, where I partner with companies to help them and their teams build their leadership skills and their people skills so that their people can thrive and have high morale. And I'm the author of a new book called Relearn Leadership. And I am so happy that you all are here today. What we want to ask you to do is we want to ask you to chime in, put in the comments what kind of questions you have. Let us know you're here and where you're coming in from. And without further ado, I'm going to let you meet our guest speakers. You are going to be very happy because these speakers have some wisdom, some knowledge, and a lot of nuggets for you. And let me just tell you that they have been really preparing for making sure that we provide you with some great programming and great information. So Laura, I'm going to start with you. I see you first. So please help our audience understand what it is you do, Laura. What makes you come here today?
Hey, thank you so much for including me, Michelle. I am excited to be here today. I'm Laura Conover. I'm based in Orange County, California, and I help employers figure out how much to pay their people. It's called compensation, and that has to do with getting base pay right as well as variable compensation. And it means like paying enough, but not too much to get and keep great people. I've been doing this for about 30 years and have 10 years corporate experience before that. I also do leadership and culture work because at the end of the day, you cannot, especially in 2024, you cannot throw enough money at people who are unhappy with toxic bosses and bad cultures. So getting great cultures and leaders in place who really listen to their people and acknowledge their contributions and leave them feeling seen and heard is really important after we get the foundation of appropriate pay set. And I do that across industries from startups to companies with thousands of employees across the country.
Much needed. Got to pay people what they want, what they're worth, and help them stay. So I love that combination. And 30 years, you've been doing this for a while, Laura. You know, you have a lot to contribute. So thank you for being here today,
Yeah, I
Laura.
started when I was 3.
Exactly. Exactly, a toddler. Kristen, introduce yourself, Kristen.
Happy to. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having me today. I'm super excited to be a part of this conversation. I'm Kristen Ashcraft. I'm a senior executive. Most recently spent 15 years in healthcare. I was in retail before that. I'm now doing fractional and advisory work for companies across industries. And really the work that I do with them is to help them position themselves for the best amount of growth and really design their organizations to support that aim. And that does involve promoting everyone, women and every type of person, to be in their best position to do their best work and to be constantly challenged in an appropriate and fun way. So culture is very important to me as well. In addition, I'm working on my own business idea. And so as I consider creating my own business, I also want to build that team in a way that I'm proud of and that people who work with me will be proud to work at that company.
Oh, that's exciting. We're gonna have to talk offline and learn more about what you're working on the side there, Kristen. Thank you. And then we have Arshia, who is so we have coast to coast because we're in California. Arshia is in New York. So Arshia, introduce yourself.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, and hello to everyone. My name is Arshia Malik. My pronouns are she, her. I have been a social enterprise founder and a first full-time employee my whole career. I've been building organizations, both in nonprofit and for-profit spaces. Most recently, a place I left last year, and I have something new coming up, but most recently I have been consulting with organizations across the globe, AstraZeneca, Boys and Girls Clubs, FINRA, kind of large enterprise level organizations with global teams on how they can better implement inclusive practices. So help develop a now patented framework. We have been kind of helping folks understand how do we prioritize all the millions of things that we can do in order to drive measurable progress for your teams, right? There's plenty of one size fits all types of trainings, but that's really not long-term going to be sustainable. So you want to make sure you're meeting teams where they're at. Coming up, I'm going to be kind of continuing my work in workforce development, especially in bringing folks from underprivileged backgrounds that don't have access to the types of career building experiences and resources to enter the workforce, to have their own experiences and build those careers and have success. So excited to be here today and be talking about this.
Thank you so much. See, I'm telling you, I'm going to show you some comments here. Evan, my son, Evan, good morning. Excited. Thank you, Evan, for being here. Don't you love it? Love it, love it, love it. Thank you, Evan. And then we have Tanya, who said, I am from the unceded, unsurrendered territories of the Algonquin and the Ashina, okay, Ottawa, Ontario. Wow, Tanya. I'm in another call sometime with Tanya, and I didn't know that Tanya was from there. Gloria, happy and Tuesday, Illinois, Chicago area. I love it. Michelle Thompson, Houston. And it's awesome. We're people from all over. So
hey, Michelle.
Yeah, you must know her then, huh, Laura? Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
I want to thank everybody for coming. And again, see, we have awesome guests. By the way, I do want to tell you, today's the first day of spring. So I am so happy that we have a new season upon us. I want to start off by giving just a little bit of a snapshot about some DEI actions and how this subject of women's achievements and gaps ties in. So here's some news, which I will share with you that makes me sad. The DEI roles are fewer. So in 2020, there were 15% of companies that didn't have any DEI programs. But in 2023, there were 20% of companies that didn't have any DEI programs. So it's going the wrong direction, in my opinion. Why does this matter? Well, because companies that have strong DEI programs have 35% women leaders compared to companies that have no, or they have something, but they're low quality. They have 25% women leaders. And we know that women leadership matters. So when companies focus on DEI, they have more women and we have more inclusive cultures. So that's important for us to think about. So here's what I want to talk about first is, Kristen, I'm going to come to you on this one.
Sure.
What do we need to do? What do companies need to do to build momentum, to attract more women, then once attract them, retain them, and by the way, promote them? What are your thoughts about that?
Yep. So I was thinking about this a little bit, and I have kind of 5 tips that I would recommend for companies of varying sizes. I think sometimes it's hard, given resources, for every company to do everything. However, first and foremost, I think we need to do some learning and development around our biases. Arshia mentioned that learning is important to create inclusive cultures, and I couldn't agree more. I think it's very difficult for us to attract and promote and encourage women if we don't even realize that we might have a bias against them. And so to be a little bit more in touch with ourselves and learn a little bit more about ourselves and how those biases come into play, I think is incredibly important. Yeah. Also, I think we need to advocate for women to be considered for new opportunities based on their potential and not necessarily having done it before. Because as you pointed out, if we have fewer women in positions of power, it means that when we are being considered to be in those positions of power, it may be our first time. And sometimes that carries some inherent risk. But that's something that we need to break through if we're going to bring more women up alongside us. In addition, I just spoke to a woman that I worked with in a previous company, and she was asking me what my biggest piece of advice was for her in trying to build her career. And I told her networking. There's lots of articles out there that show that men are much more comfortable and adept at networking than women tend to be. In fact, there's a chief article that I shared with Michelle. She'll share it with the group afterwards that talks about the import of networking. And so really, my charge to everyone in the audience is if a woman reaches out to you for help them connect to others. That's the biggest gift we can give, is not just our own advice and our feedback, but also introducing them to people who can promote them. Fourth tip is really women's ERGs. I know this tends to fit better with larger organizations. That's an employee resource group, if you're not familiar with the acronym. And basically that's a group that comes together that supports a particular background. And in this case, if it's women, you can bring in women to lead that organization. It can create opportunities for them. In addition, you can bring in allies. And it's a really wonderful place for people to share what they're going through and support each other and create that networking effect within your own company. And last but certainly not least, I would recommend mentorship. This works for everyone, but for women in particular, it can create a really safe place for women to share what they aspire to do and for the mentors to actually help them achieve those things, either through advocacy or connections. And also, it's a two-way street. In any relationship I'm ever in with a mentor or mentee relationship, both people should get something out of it, which is wonderful. And so those are my 5 tips for helping attract and retain and promote women.
I hope our audience was taking notes. That was a lot of really good, viable information. That was awesome, Kristen. And, a couple things I want to accent was, one is you talked about bias in the beginning. We have to have self-awareness because that's how we go from unconscious to conscious, right? Because once we become aware of it, then we can do something about it. So making sure that we are in tune and in touch with our biases. We all have biases. We're not bad people because of it. We just want to make sure that we're aware of it so that we can make sure that it's not negatively impacting our behaviors. And I heard you talk a lot about advocacy and allyship, right? And giving people an opportunity. So I think that's great. We do have a comment here. So let me see what we've got. Let's see, we'll begin. Oh, let's see. Somebody here from Ohio was telling, let's see here. We got Oregon. Okay. Oh, Lillian. Hi, Lillian. You live in Portland. I lived in Portland once. And then we've got Tanya from Ohio. I'm telling you, this is so exciting. You all see you're in for a treat. You already got 5 tips about what to do. And so that's awesome in terms of building momentum. Now I want to talk about this. Laura, I'm going to come to you on this because courage to apply for new positions and for promotions. In your experience, you've had a lot of experience dealing with the compensation part and the culture part. Tell us a little bit more about what you see and what kind of guidance you can provide about what women need to do to be more courageous.
Well, we know that men will apply for positions they're not qualified for, and that women typically say to themselves, I can't apply unless I can check all the boxes with respect to education required, specific experience required. And we just don't tend to go ahead and say, you know what, I'm going to try that thing that might be a little bit of a stretch for me, that position that I'm interested in. And we need to be able to kind of say to ourselves, you know what, it's okay to take the risk. It's a good thing to take a risk because I will end up in a better position, potentially long run in my career, if I kind of put my toe in the water, even when it seems like I don't know exactly what I would do in that role. And again, we know that men will typically go ahead and apply, and they also are better at promoting themselves for promotions and higher positions in companies.
That's interesting. And that kind of ties in with what Kristen was saying in terms of networking. It has been shown men are better at networking. They're happy to promote themselves and talk about all the great things they've done. And we want to become more courageous and tell people more about what we're doing. It's okay to promote yourself, right? So yeah, it's okay. Sometimes we think we don't want to promote ourselves too much, but it's okay. Here's let's see, we have Brenda, who said she agrees, Kristen, with all those tidbits that you shared. She's in and you talked about a lot. So I'm sure you agreed with a lot. Now, here's what I want to talk about now, because we're talking about courageous. We know that we work for a lot of things, satisfaction, making a difference with people, but we also know that money matters. So what I want to do is I'm going to talk about money. And I know that Laura and Arshia, y'all both have some good wisdom and experience to share with us on this. So let's talk money.
Okay, well, I'm going to start with some data. What we hear about a lot in the press, and it's true, on average, women make 84 cents per hour for every dollar that men make. This is on average across all ages, industries, education levels, ethnicities, regions of the country. Well, we also know that Black women make less than white women, and Latinos experience the largest wage gap. So what's behind all this? to start with, when women enter the workforce, even when they have the same level of education, they often make less than men for comparable roles.
Yeah.
There's also an ongoing, what I call mommy penalty. Mothers make less than fathers. The data shows that. And there's a great data source that Michelle is going to share at the end from the Women's Law Center that gives you more of a deep dive in all of this. But mothers of every race make less than white non-Hispanic fathers. And the mommy penalty is greatest for women in low-paying jobs. And also part of this, the mommy penalty is the fact that women still take more time over the life of their career out of their full-time working typically to take care of children and aging parents than men do. So what else is going on here? Barriers still exist in male-dominated fields, especially those in science and technology. And we have a higher percentage of men in higher paying jobs, especially those at the top of organizations, and a higher percentage of women in lower paying jobs. But we are making some progress, I think mostly due to pay equity laws and pay transparency laws. In states like California and most states do have pay equity laws, and all states have to comply with the Federal Equal Pay Act. But we've needed more than just the Federal Pay Act to help us make some traction with respect to pay differences. The pay equity law in California says that differences in pay for same or similar jobs must be justified by tenure and or job performance, sales levels in sales roles, and that these pay differences within same or similar jobs absolutely cannot look like or be driven by differences in gender, race, or ethnicity. And so this law, at least in California, is helping us a bit with some of the gaps. Pay transparency, I think, is also very critical in this conversation. Right now, about 10 states have pay transparency laws. California's came into being the beginning of last year. And pay transparency requires that we post salary ranges when hiring into new roles, and we have to make them available to employees. So employees need to be able to say to their boss, what's the range for my job? So giving this information simply about pay ranges really helps giving women a leg up when they negotiate for salaries. Finally, it's also important to note that it is now not legal in California and some states to ask about salary history. And that is hugely important, because if someone starts behind, starts their career, making less than their male counterparts, if they have to keep telling, future employers what their salary history is, they never make up the gap. So it's good that we implemented laws like that as well.
That's some really powerful information. The reason why I wanted to do this topic is because it's Women's History Month. And yes, we're going to celebrate and we're going to recognize that we are not finished, right? It's a progress. It's a journey. So we're not done. I thank you for that information. And audience, I know you're taking notes. Archie, I'm going to come to you in a second, but I want to share a couple of comments that we have. Tanya says, I think women need to learn more about menopause. She learned recently that some women encounter a lack of self-confidence just out of the blue, not applying the positions they would have before, but it's part of hormonal change and can be managed. So, wow, Tanya, that's interesting because it's real, right? We all go through it eventually. And then Tanya also added, how sad is this? Unpaid caregiving is seen as a female vacation. Yeah, Tanya, totally agree. That's a very sad statement. And thank you for sharing that. Arshia, I'm gonna come to you now again on the same topic of money.
Yeah.
You have some additional insights.
Yeah, and I can kind of build off of what both Laura and Kristen have been saying. I think in particular with regards to how I've been kind of talking to clients in the past and what I suggest, I think I live in New York, as I mentioned, we also have a pay transparency law for job descriptions. There's plenty of articles out there about how companies are getting around it by putting something like $60,000 to $300,000. That's not a reasonable range, and it doesn't help. However, that's something that we as employees can do in the organizations, right? Technically, doesn't comply with the law, but the law is so vague that there's not really a way to enforce that yet, or so it seems, right? So folks within organizations that are seeing that happen can help kind of advocate for better compliance with those laws and ask for better, more reasonable, but that is in the language of the law, ranges that make sense. The other piece that I think can be really helpful when it comes to applying for jobs, with regards to women of color, I think, as has been mentioned before, everything we say about women is highly increased for women of color, different kinds of women of color. Privilege is a relative concept. We have to kind of understand and think about that. I am less privileged than some. I am more privileged than some, and that's okay. It's not necessarily a good or bad thing. It is a reality, and we can kind of think about that. So, salary negotiation is a big piece of this. As much as possible, reducing the practice of salary negotiation is actually an equalizing practice for compensation. More and more, I just accepted an offer for a new role. I was looking for the next thing, really focused on the same work. And a bunch of the companies I spoke to actively put that they would not negotiate salaries, and they put reasonable pay ranges. It's very heartening and encouraging to see. That being said, it's absolutely not the norm yet, right? So another thing that organizations can be thinking about in order to put into practice these sorts of things and counter their own ingrained biases. We're not going to become a robot the next day that's able to do everything perfectly. And we certainly know robots are built by people. That's a whole nother conversation. But these are sorts of practices that we can put into place to kind of counter our own internal biases when we are the hiring manager for something, right? And then the last thing kind of I want to touch on, tied to what Kristen was saying earlier in terms of kind of internally making sure that we have mentorship programs and such, these sorts of resources, moving beyond mentorship to sponsorship. Again, lots of research out there. For those who haven't heard that, what that really means is more than just, quietly in an office helping folks, but actually speaking their name when they're not in the room, putting their names forward for opportunities. Really, really helpful. I have been, there's research about even kind of mixed mentor-mentee relationship when it comes to ethnicity and gender, and that can be really helpful because the reality of the situation is if my mentor is someone that's in a higher position of power, in today's current state, they have a higher ability to bring me up there. So, white men out there, do more. And then finally, managers need to be trained in order to talk to their reports and their teams about compensation. They are often so stuck in the middle between wanting to do more. There are plenty of good managers out there that want to do more, that don't have the ability to do so, aren't trained to talk about pay, aren't trained to talk about advancement opportunities. And again and again and again, every client I've worked with, training managers has been one of the highest priorities. There's, again, middle managers, first-time managers. There's just lots of work to be done there. People quit managers, not jobs necessarily, right? And so we really want to think about that. They are the first person and relationship builder.
Such great comments here that are being said. And, to the comment about sponsorship, which is a form of allyship. I mean, when everybody doesn't have an opportunity to be in the room. So when other people are not in the room, what we can do as sponsors is give acknowledgement, call their name, give them credit. And so that's awesome. I tell you, the wisdom that is being shared right now is just amazing. So thank you so much for everything you're saying. Now, so let's talk about age. We talked about money. We talked about a lot. And I'm going to tell you, we only have a few more minutes, but let's talk about age. From being younger to then being more mature. Where have you seen, Kristen, I'm going to come to you on this because you kind of talked about that as we're preparing. Tell us what you see in this whole ageism thing.
Yeah, I'll try to move quickly, but I feel like ageism is something that affects women no matter what age you are. And it's something that we need to continue to work to combat, because I think sometimes we think about it first for women who are maybe earlier in their careers, Perhaps they happen to look a little bit younger than they maybe even in fact, and maybe they have more experience than they might appear to have on the surface. And I faced this myself early in my career. I went for a first-time vendor meeting with my boss, and my boss was brought into the room for the meeting, and I was left in the waiting area. Fortunately, my boss was a sponsor and an advocate. He realized quickly what had happened, went outside, grabbed me, and brought me in, where I led the meeting with the vendor.
Nice.
But those things happen, and we all have to be aware that they're happening. In addition, we need to be able to convey that a woman is ready, even if it appears maybe she is not, and to give her that shot when we are in the positions to make those decisions, maybe a little bit later in our careers. And lastly, as we age, I mean, this kind of goes back to Tanya's comment, actually, from the group. We face this actually as women as we age as well. So there was a recent Esquire article that Michelle's also going to share, that in a survey of people over age 55, a Pittsburgh-based consumer analytics platform found that people in white-collar occupations experienced almost twice the level of ageism as those in service, craftsman, or technical roles. And women reported even higher levels of ageism than their male colleagues. So to me, one of the opportunities there is to continue to upskill all of our employees so that we're never making a judgment based on somebody's lack of tenure or significant tenure on what they can or cannot accomplish. We're all in this together, and the more that we can work together, the better we'll be.
100%. I tell you what, and by the way, being in the learning and development business myself, I love that we are saying it's all about training and developing and upskilling people. I want to share a couple comments. Tanya, that's such a good question, Tanya. Are there men in authority on this call? Listening to these messages on how to improve women's experience. Tanya, you know what? That's a great question, because we cannot keep it to ourselves, right? And then Gloria said, leadership traits that are needed, but the behaviors that are expected, allowed, and rewarded based on gender identity. So, so thank you for those questions. And I am not sure, but here's the thing. I know one man that's on the call, and that's my son, Evan. And so thank you, Evan, for having an interest in this. But to the point of that, we need to make sure that we don't keep this conversation to ourselves, because this is about everybody. I do want to say, we have just a couple more minutes, but I am happy. You know, I love sports. Anybody that knows me knows I love sports. And we do have some progress that has been made in sports. We still have work to do. But you know what? Was happy last year, the women's U.S. soccer team finally got the money that they deserve, finally, after much battling going on. And it's March Madness right now. And I'm excited because women's sports are getting much more recognition. There's been a lot of press about Caitlin Clark from University of Iowa, right? The Hawkeyes breaking records and beating records of men and women. So there's a lot going on, even though, however, sadly enough, the pay is still not equitable. So we are not finished yet. We still have work to do. Evan, you got some props for being here. And so with just a couple more minutes that we have, I'll open this up, and Arshia, you can start. We have like 2 more minutes, and I still do want to have a couple of screens to share. But in a nutshell, what do you see? What can companies do amidst these obstacles, political or not political? Uh-oh, you're on mute. Whoops.
Sorry, trying to be the right type of speaker and mute myself when I'm not talking. I'm going to try to not fully try to answer this question in 2 minutes, but what I will say is I personally am seeing a lot of change in language around job titles, departments, and so on when it comes to DEI. This debate and these pendulum swings have been going on for a very, very, very long time, for decades. We have seen everything from CSR to then DEI to ESG, and all of these different things have had overlapping components when we think about taking care of our people. I'm seeing teams shifting to, we call people and culture instead of DEI. There are companies out there that are still focusing on this work and doing this work and will continue to do this work. They might just have to be a little bit smarter about avoiding some of the divisive language, right? And that's going to happen. I think the other thing beyond that is, so that's really more to say, please don't be afraid of engaging in this work. Yeah, second, I think that a really key thing is the more we embed equitable systems or systems that drive greater equity into our business processes, the better. As much as possible, reducing this kind of moralizing and back and forth and defensiveness that comes up. How can we just think about, hey, we will be better companies? There's plenty of research out there that shows that if we are more inclusive, we will have more diversity, we will be more successful. What can we be doing? Everything from what we talked about today to better training managers, L&D is huge, upskilling, all of those sorts of things. There's 1.5 million things you can do. Meet your team where they're at, understand what's needed most here. Don't try to throw 1,000 things at the wall and hope something sticks, please, because that only leaves people with a kind of bad taste in their mouth about this work, right? But there's lots to be said there.
Yeah, we can continue. I mean, seriously, sometimes we do these programs, it's like, we're gonna need a part 2 on this. And that might be true here because we only scratch the surface. Here's some resources that we have. And so take a picture of it real quick if you can, some of the resources, and then we can actually provide you the actual links to some of them. I want to show you our slide because you have gotten a lot of really good information. And I want to make sure that you can connect with us, right? I want to make sure that you can connect with us to continue the conversation. So take a picture of that or make a quick note of our email addresses and our LinkedIn or our website so that we can make sure that we stay connected. And wow, we're already out of time. I do have a couple more things I want to tell you, and that is next month on April the 18th, we're going to be talking about a lot of dimensions of diversity because April is Diversity Awareness Month. So in Diversity Awareness Month, I've got a commitment from someone who's going to talk about colorism. Another person is going to talk about physical handicaps. And so, you know what? It's in disabilities. People and learning disabilities, right? Neurodiversity, right? There's so much to it. Too many times people think just race and gender. There's a lot to it. So I want to make sure that you know to come and join us on April the 18th. And then I want to encourage you to be bold, to make sure you take time to breathe, to open your eyes, to look around for help. Brene Brown taught us that asking for help and being vulnerable is a strength, and to dare. And I want you to stop self-doubt and whatever is not working and start believing in yourself. And with that, then I am going to thank you for joining us today. I respect your time and just, wow, such great. Gloria said, yes, part 2. Thank you, Gloria. We're going to have to take, because this was, we have a lot more information to discuss. So thank you, audience, for coming. Our guests, Laura, Kristen, Arshia, thank you so much for saying yes to my invitation. And with that, I'll end our call. Thank you so much, everybody. See you next month.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.